right, well, thank you. Thank you very much. While we're getting organized here, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We're doing a focus group in front of your very eyes. These lovely people have agreed to come talk as if they were in a focus group. So you guys are all behind the glass. You don't exist. We've asked them for open and honest answers. We're just looking for their opinions. And we asked for a diverse group of consumers, people who buy groceries. So to start out with, I'd like to go down the line and tell us your name and a little bit about you and what your favorite place to buy food is, where your favorite place to buy food is.
Okay. So. I'm Ginny, and I'm from Falls Church, and I generally go to Harris Teeter. I grew up in Hawaii, but I'm here now. Darn it.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, my name is Kyle. I usually like to shop actually at the sort of Asian supermarkets that are around me, so H Mart, LA Mart, new Lotte that showed up. Other than that, Giant, because I have a membership card.
Okay.
That's useful to me.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, my name is Shariva, mom of 4, and I typically like to shop at Giant and Aldi.
And why is that?
I'm sorry?
Why do you like
Aldi.
Aldi?
Aldi,
Yeah. Why do you like to shop there?
because the produce is really cheap.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming.
My name is Marissa. I live in Alexandria. I've been here about 5 years in the DC area. I usually shop at Giant or Whole Foods. I don't have a car, so sometimes I'll go to Whole Foods on my way home, and I like the organic produce, especially from there, or meat I like to get from there because I just feel like it's healthier. And then Giant is cheaper, and so I shop there.
Great, thanks for coming.
My name is Steve. I'm in Ashburn, Virginia. I prefer to shop at Wegmans, Harris Teeter, and Lotte.
Because?
Well, the products, they're fresh products. They're also convenient to my geographic area where I am.
Okay, great, thanks for coming.
Good morning. My name is Paul. I'm an Arlingtonian, so I live just down the block. My favorite places to shop for groceries are Mom's Organic and farmers markets.
And why is that?
It's high-quality food and supporting local businesses at farmers markets.
Okay, great, thanks for coming.
I'm Bridget. I shop wherever I'm driving past.
Great. That's what I love about focus groups. You never know what's going to happen. All right. So when you're thinking about what we call animal foods like meat, eggs, milk, how much comparing do you do? What do you look for when you're shopping for those kinds of products?
Price, color.
Can you speak into the mic?
Price? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's on.
Price, color
Uh-huh.
of the meat,
Okay.
smell.
Okay. How much comparing do you do? A lot? And what do you look for in the color?
Pink. Just freshness, not brown, not like it's been sitting there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. How about everybody else?
I usually, whenever I buy any kind of dairy or meat, I always try to usually buy organic and make sure there's no added hormones or anything like that. And I do always, check the sell-by date or package date to make sure that it hasn't been there too long.
Okay.
I'm pretty much along with the other panelists here. I do a lot of price comparison. I look at the different flyers that we see that come, whether it's on my phone or other types of social media. Also look at the newspapers, obviously the flyers along those lines. But when I get down to the brass tacks, it's really about the quality and the freshness on the products at that time. And now it will move, as I said, between the Harris Teeter, the Wegmans, and the Lotte for different things. There's no one particular place I get everything at.
Okay. And when you say quality, what do you mean?
Well, from a quality standpoint, I want to make sure that it's fresh. From our vegetables, from that standpoint, that there's a good shelf life on it, that it didn't just, I only have a day or two and then I have to use it. As well as with meats and poultry, to make sure that we're always on the fresh cycle with it. We don't really like the things that they're toward the end of the sell-by date. That's just our preference.
Jan, for me, it comes down to the nutrition.
You too.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to the nutrition of the items I'm buying. I know it's hard to compare with fresh meats, but specifically when it comes to milk, I am definitely looking for organic, locally sourced milk in the area. So when I go to Mom's, there are certain companies that I will look for, and if they're not at Mom's, I'll go elsewhere to find those specific companies that have the organic, nutritious milk or meats that I'm looking for.
And what is it about organic that makes you feel that way?
Well, I guess not necessarily organic specifically, but the non-additives. So staying away from sugars added to specific items, and because that makes me feel fresh if I have fresher milk or meats.
Cool.
I get organic milk simply because it's just me, and it lasts longer. So,
Cool. What else do you buy?
what else do I like? The same thing as that. Just like fresh meat, and that it looks good, smells good, and price is really not all that much. I'm bad about not looking really at prices very much.
Well, that's okay. All right.
I'll go ahead. Solidarity with Zariba here. That I tend to be more of a value shopper than focusing, at least lately, on whether it's organic or locally sourced, which makes me feel guilty. But I have a budget that I'm working on, so I tend to look more for, I strike a balance between freshness and value, I guess, specifically when it comes to meat. And I don't really buy milk. I buy coconut milk or almond milk because I'm not a fan of milk.
Okay.
Very much.
Why aren't you a fan of milk?
I don't really care for the flavor very much, typically I don't like the fat in milk that does taste good, whole milk, and I don't like 1% or lean milks, shall we say. Yeah. Plus, I think coconut milk tastes way better on cereal.
Okay. And why do you feel guilty that you don't buy a local organic?
Well, that's going to get into a longer story, Jan. I have actually lived and worked on farms in the past, and I've try to avoid going into a longer story. But I am aware of perhaps what I ought to be consuming in terms of what might be considered better product, as well as what I might better be spending the money on in terms of supporting local growers, that sort of thing. But for right now, recently, unfortunately, my budget's bottom line is more important to me. So.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks for that.
I just realized something kind of funny while I was listening to that. So I also, it's Ginny, I also buy organic milk. My boyfriend who I live with despises anything to do with organic because it's not scientifically sound. So I buy organic milk because it lasts longer. I mean, it just, and it has to do with pasteurization, whatever, but, it lasts longer. I also realized something funny when you all were talking. I don't buy a lot of meat because I eat very little meat, except I really like sausage. And when I buy sausage, this is the funny thing I realized while you guys were talking about price. I never buy the cheapest one. I always buy the slightly less cheap one because I don't want the cheap one because that can't be good. So I buy the slightly less cheap one because it must be better. But not the expensive one.
I'm with you. The second one up.
Yes, second one up. For no rational reason.
Okay. And why don't you buy the most expensive one?
I guess I sometimes do. It really has to do with which is more spicy.
Okay. So taste. Great. All right, and is there a source of information that you look for or that you trust in terms of getting information about your food?
I would say I have a friend who is an organic farmer and has just published several books about organic farming. I don't necessarily abide by everything he says, and I read a number of I read a number of things also about food. They don't inform everything that I do, but I would say that's where I get information.
Okay. So his books and him personally?
His books and other, just, all of the like usual suspects about, Michael Pollan and all that sort of thing. It's like interesting to me. They do not dictate what I do, but I am interested in perceptions about food. I was on the fast food nation train for a while.
Okay. What made you get off?
It was old information.
Okay. Great. How about everybody else? Where do you get your information about food?
I'm sure a lot of it came from parents, certain brands or certain types of things, or habits from, you learn from your parents, and also looking at labels.
When you look at a label, what are you looking for?
I don't really look at labels, but it's there.
Pretty pictures.
Okay, great. Steve?
Well, I've been married for quite some time now, so I get my information from my wife before I go to the grocery store. That's the first thought. But we do talk a lot about what's in the products and the labels. And the latest thing in our household is this wheat belly, wheat train, going those things, and looking at, not gluten, but I do know what gluten is. But it has to do with reducing wheat and corn products and things like that are put into so many different foods for a variety of reasons, for taste. But primarily I'll do some research. I'll read the labels. I'll read the labels before we go, see what's in the pantry, and we'll have a rather animated dialogue about what I want to bring in the house. And, I'll leave it at that. And then, of course,
Oh, no, that's the good stuff. What do you want to bring in?
That's the good stuff. And then I'll go to our, the modern day encyclopedia, Google, and start doing some research. Sometimes we'll hit USDA, but very rarely. But primarily, it's we rely on my wife to do a lot of the things. She is a big avid reader and is really health conscious. So that's why we're on this wheat belly thing.
Right. So do you know what she reads to find out her information?
She spends a lot of time at the library. There are some shows that she sees like on the Food Channel, and we'll grasp an idea from there, the Cooking Channel, and say, okay, well, how is this? What is in this? And then say, well, how if we go this route, let's try it over here. And what is the good piece out of this one as versus the good piece out of that one. The other thing that we wind up with doing it to broaden our palate, because most of the things people eat what their parents taught them. You get the recipes that your moms or dad told you, and that's culturally the way you learned it. Well, she came across this thing called it's not Blue Canopy, Blue Apron, I believe it is, which is really phenomenal because we get fresh foods that show up on the doorstep periodically, and with different ingredients and different things. So we'll try that and go through those recipes, and then we'll go replicate that down the road.
Okay.
So,
Great. Sharila, where do you get your information? Facebook?
Yeah. Of course my parents, but a lot of the latest information comes from Facebook.
And what's the latest information you found on Facebook?
Farm raised versus wild caught fish, chicken, and the injections. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. The water, I don't know what it is that they're injecting the chickens with. So when I go shopping, I kind of look for chickens that are not so fat. Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay. And the information that you get on Facebook, is that from your friends, or
Yeah,
does it
someone
come?
would have shared it, and I would have just clicked on the link and checked it out.
Everything's on.
Okay. This was good, Shreva, so you got to repeat the whole thing.
Okay. Facebook. That's where I get most of my information now, this day and age. Of course, my parents. And like I said, with the farm raised versus the wild caught and fish, you know, that it's better to do the wild caught fish than farm raised, because it's like scientific stuff, like chemicals and stuff. I forgot what else I said.
The chicken and the injection.
Oh, the chicken and the injections. I would typically not get the fat chickens. I would get the skinnier chickens because less likely that they were injected with whatever it is that they injected with.
Okay. Great.
I learned that on Facebook, and I think it's just by, you know, I don't know, they're probably ads, whatever they are. Anyway, they come up there, and I just learned that the bagged salads, you want to make sure you get them that are squished, because they're squished when they're first packed, and then they get fatter and fatter as they sit around. So get a squished salad pack.
Okay. Great. Paul?
I tend to do quite a bit of reading on this stuff, so.
Can you put the mic?
Yeah, I was just saying I tend to do quite a bit of reading on this stuff. My sister's in vet school, so I feel like she's a good source. The gym I go to, there are people that talk about this constantly all the time. A couple of magazines or reading materials that I frequent are the Clean Eating magazine, as far as finding clean
The
food.
what?
Clean Eating magazine.
Clean Eating magazine?
And another source, I guess I find reputable, is the Whole 30 book. As far as
Whole 30?
Whole 30. That basically breaks down what you should eat and shouldn't eat.
And at the gym, what are they talking about?
Things to avoid. We share recipes as far as what meets our goals, essentially gluten-free, paleo style.
So what should you avoid?
Sugars, specifically any ingredient you can't pronounce, I avoid.
Okay.
You could study a pronunciation guide.
Thanks,
Change the whole game.
Okay. Marissa, how about you?
I feel like I do really love to cook, so I think I do get a lot of information from cookbooks. And then I also just on blogs and looking online. I've recently been looking at this blog a lot called Well and Good, and it just has a lot of food and exercise and different kind of information. But I do always take kind of that kind of stuff with a grain of salt, so I usually click on the links that are attached in the article and try to see where they got their information. And again, I read the Post a lot, so if they have any science info about food, and I watch their food kind of blog on the Post a lot, so sometimes they'll have more scientific information too, and I like to read that as well. And just along with what you were saying, I live alone, so I do often deal with issues of portion, so I have been doing like Blue Apron and Plated a little bit more often lately, and it's been a nice way to cut down on waste and make it just a little bit easier sometimes for cooking.
Great.
I guess that leaves me. I was sitting here thinking that I basically get my dietary or food information from the women in my life. Obviously, I was raised as by my mother, mostly cooking, and she taught me how to cook. These days, though, I mostly learn kind of what I don't want to do from my mother because I feel like she's very susceptible to dietary fads. So she always sends me info about like, oh, this is the new thing that you shouldn't be eating or a different diet they should try. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just keep that in my pocket and avoid that. But my girlfriend, she watches a lot of cooking channels, so I get to try a lot of really interesting dishes that way. She likes the competition ones with strange ingredients. She lives that life very well. But she and I, one of the reasons I didn't mention earlier, one of the reasons that I really like shopping at primarily the Asian supermarkets that are around where I live is because I've lived in Asia, especially Japan, for many years, and that's where she and I met. So that's kind of where both of us dwell in a lot of our cooking and sort of eating habits that we developed while living there. I also realized that, and then my sister-in-law is a dietitian as well, so she and my brother actually runs a farmer's market out in Colorado, so I get a pretty good spread of information that way. Personally, because of my lifestyle, my budget, left to my own devices, I eat more like my father / permanent bachelor. This is what I call a diet. Right now I'm trying to be green face, which is, meat and veg, basically. And then other than that,
What did you call that?
Green face diet.
Green face?
Yeah, I think it's very popular with the what's the workout program? CrossFit. Yeah, so it's basically anything that has or had a face, preferably had. Although I'll eat a fish's head, I don't mind. And anything green, basically. So basically vegetables. That's kind of. I'm not super strict. I'm not going to lie about that, but it's a good ideal to strive for. And then I also get a lot of, when it comes to higher level sort of, when you, scientific information about food, I actually get a lot of information from podcasts, and primarily one that's called The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which is probably one of the influences that informed my snide remark towards Paul, which I apologize if I was being rude, but I would rather know what the thing I can't pronounce is than just avoiding it as a rule, even though I understand that that's a kind of a good rule to just sort of avoid and keep things simpler in your diet. So I can see both sides of it, but that would be more where I was on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Great. And are there any sources of information or things that you hear about food that you're skeptical of? Like, have you heard anything lately that you just go, oh, I just don't believe that?
I feel like all the recent, I feel like all you hear now about is like how cholesterol is good for you now, and I am a little skeptical about that. And I just feel like there's always research coming out like every 5-10 years, and they change their mind about something. And I'm more of the belief of everything in moderation, because I don't know. I can't imagine that cholesterol can be good for, I don't know. It just seems weird to have like 50 years saying that it's bad, and then all of a sudden it's not that bad. And I just wonder how long these studies they're doing on these people and how closely they can actually keep an eye on their diet over years, because I don't know. I feel like it's hard to control what people are eating for a certain amount of time.
And other life factors as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jenny, anything you've heard lately that you're skeptical of? Any sources that you're skeptical of? No, that's all right.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of the gluten-free craze at the moment. Mike just kicked on. I'm skeptical of the gluten-free craze going on right now. Even though I'm guilty of, when I get a pizza, I get a gluten-free pizza. They've essentially made everything gluten-free, and they're putting gluten-free on labels of things that are already gluten-free. So I'm extremely skeptical of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I tend to think of the craze side of gluten-free. So on the other hand, one of the reasons that my sister-in-law is a dietitian now is because she actually has celiacs and Graves. That's also one of the things that drove my brother into getting into the farmer's market, was concern for their specific dietary needs. So without ever intending to undercut the fact that there are people out there who need gluten-free diets, also it's kind of been turned into an extension of the Atkins diet, which has been recycled for over a century. So that's definitely a big thing. So it is funny when you see corn chips labeled as gluten-free, though. It just means that a lot of people don't know what gluten is.
Absolutely. Anything you're skeptical of?
I'm an English teacher, so I'm kind of skeptical of everything. That's all I got.
Okay, sure.
I just wanted to add, I've always been kind of, also skeptical of the gluten-free thing, but I've recently been kind of reading this blog called Clean, and they were talking about how, like, a lot of people, even if you don't have celiac disease, a lot of people have natural, like, gluten can cause inflammation, or just is a common kind of allergen that can just make them feel a little less aware and awake and energized, and I think that's part of why a lot of people are kind of falling on the bandwagon. I don't think everybody is better without gluten, but I think it's probably more people than just the people with celiac disease.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a skeptic.
I eat gluten and I love gluten.
Okay. Sure.
No, just the things I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. So when you see something on Facebook about food, do you send it all the time, or some of the time, or? is there anything you've seen on Facebook that you're skeptical of?
Well, yeah, the tilapia. The tilapia thing where the tilapia was like in some kind of big, I don't know, it was like a big bowl thing, and they were like putting chemicals in it to grow faster. And I'm just thinking about going to Aldi's and buying a bag of tilapia, and I'm like, is this the tilapia that they chemical raised?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I stopped eating tilapia.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll start back again.
Great. So thinking about specifically dairy products, milk, butter, cheese, eggs, for example, and meat products, is there anything that you've heard or seen recently that's changed your opinion about any of those?
Jan, not recently, but back in 2011, I watched Clean Inc., I believe is the name of it. Food Inc. I watched
Food Inc.
Food Inc., and that forever changed my outlook on beef and pork specifically. So I haven't had beef or pork since 2011 because of that. So I'm mainly birds and fish.
Okay. So
Don't get the cheap stuff. You're all right. Don't get the cheap stuff.
what was it that you saw in Food Inc. that caused you to swear off beef and pork?
I think the mass production at these processing facilities of animals, I'm just going down the butcher lines. I always tell my friends if I was able to raise a cow and I knew what I was feeding this cow, I would have cow all day, every day. But it's
Until
not
the cow
known.
is gone.
So, yeah, it's specifically not knowing what's going in or what's being fed to these animals and how they're being slaughtered, I guess.
But you mentioned earlier that you try to shop with locally raised and locally grown. So would you buy cow from a farmer that you knew or that was at the farmer's market?
If I got to meet the cow.
Okay.
No, if I knew where it was coming from. So if it was a farm in Virginia and I could actually go physically visit the place just to see, it's like, all right, we're good.
Okay.
I probably would.
So like that Portlandia sketch. So like that Portlandia sketch that they were.
All right. Great. How about everybody else? Have you seen anything specifically about those products?
Can I ask, when you say lately, like just within the last year kind of thing? Or
Just, your lifetime.
lifetime? All right, give me a minute.
I'm glad butter's okay now. I prefer butter to margarine, and it used to be margarine was forced on me, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember what documentary it was. It was some food documentary, but it was just showing like the chickens, and some of the chicken farmers I think it was for Tyson's, were basically talking about how like horrible they were being forced to kind of keep the chickens, and they just were all dirty, and they were showing all the dead ones that just died from being kept in this small space, and that kind of made me always be conscious of trying to get like free roaming, or I never know exactly what the terminology means. I feel like it means a lot, and it's hard to know what means what, because I know on eggs it's like there's organic, and then there's like free roaming, and it's just a lot of different terminology that means a lot of different things, and I don't really know, but I always am really try to be careful when I'm buying any kind of dairy products for that reason, because I just feel like there's a lot of inhumane treatment.
So what do you look for on the label? How do you know?
I read somewhere what I was supposed to be looking for, and I forget what it was for eggs. It was like, yeah, I forget what it said, but I always try to make sure it's like organic and free roaming, and I try to pick the one that makes it sound like the chicken was the happiest and in its life, and less like it was like shoved in a box and had its beak cut off, and I don't know.
Okay, great.
On a lighter note, wow, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun. Back to the question I really heard was about dairy products and those lines. The things that I came across that were lately had to deal with the amount of fat content for milk. We were always brought up and have whole milk with cereal, and we were talking about that earlier. And the latest thing that came across had to do with having less milk, less fat in milk. So we moved to first 2%, then a 1%, then a skim milk for my son, just because we thought it was the right thing to do. No scientific evidence on it. He likes it to the point that when we go to a restaurant and he asks for a glass of milk, he doesn't like that because that glass of milk is typically whole milk. But from a dairy standpoint, that's pretty much on that side. From the eggs, I was a strong believer of just get the lowest or the middle of the brand eggs in the house. And I was doing fine with that, and my mother-in-law, I love her to death, she said, we really should be getting Egglins. So, okay, so I kept getting Egglins, and we are now an Egglins family. And if we don't have Egglins in the house, it's like, well, where did you get these eggs, Steve?
What is it about Egglins?
It's a different flavor, different taste. I don't know, but it makes our happy house.
Very important.
Great.
Dialogue.
All right. Anything else?
I guess this sort of ties into kind of what I was avoiding going into, so I'm going to process as I go and keep it a short story. But reasons why I feel guilty not buying such fine products. I mentioned that I've lived and worked on farms before. Specifically, I traveled in Europe and I worked through the WOOF program. I see any heads nod. Yeah, somebody in the back. It's Willing Workers on Organic Farms. So it's a volunteer sort of information exchange kind of thing. And then I've worked on a friend's farm that was, call it basically a cattle farm because it wasn't so big that I would consider it a ranch. So I've had the opportunity to have the freshest possible sort of products, specifically. Like after working on my friend's cattle farm, I became a vegetarian because the beef was too good and I couldn't get it easily in grocery stores. Getting it right from the cow in the front yard, and the milk, for example, straight from the goat's teat, as it were. It's the official term, so it's okay to say that, right? So that's the one thing. So then, right now, of course, without playing my tiny violin with my schedule and my budget, I feel like I can't even conceive of achieving those levels of tasty food. So I just get what's easy. Yeah. Spend a lot of time justifying it. What's that?
Are you vegetarian now then, or are you
No.
beef around here?
No, I'm not a vegetarian now. So, it's a green face. Don't make a face with the greens. But. And how I became not a vegetarian is another story entirely.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for that. Any other changes of opinion about food? Positive or negative?
I have one dairy problem. Here's my dairy problem. I don't like Greek yogurt, and I can't find the regular yogurt. And I'm skeptical about Greek yogurt.
Okay. What are you skeptical about Greek yogurt?
The fact that everybody seems to like it but me.
Yeah, it's another bit of a eating fad.
Like,
but
why? There's sometimes I buy the Stonyfield 3-ounce baby yogurts because they're the only yogurt. Everything else is Greek.
Okay.
But really, I am actually skeptical of why there's been this giant switch from 2/3 of the yogurt case being regular yogurt and 1/3 being Greek yogurt, and then that has switched. It's kind of fascinating, except that I really like regular yogurt.
Yeah, hard to find.
as a fan of Greek yogurt, I think it's because most people feel like it's dessert for breakfast because it's so thick and creamy and delicious. I also like regular yogurt, and I resent the fact that it is harder to find because everything is now Greek yogurt, and not all Greek yogurt is made the same. So.
Okay. And Ginny, why do you like the fact that butter's back?
I just like the taste better, which is funny because when I was a kid, which is kind of cool because when I was a kid, I had to eat margarine, and I didn't like margarine. And no, I liked margarine back then, but now I like butter, and so I went with the trend, and that's happy.
And what kind of butter do you buy?
Land O'Lakes.
Okay. And why do you pick that one?
I guess probably because my mom bought it, and I'm real old, so that was a long time ago.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you all for that. Now we're going to do some quick word associations. So I've got some words, and just want to get your top of mind. What comes to your mind when you hear that? Okay. So the first one is farmers.
In the Dell.
In the Dell.
Overworked.
Market.
Needed.
I tend to think of the local farmers, just
The local
and
farmers.
the Amish. They're usually at at the farmer's market, so fresh.
Fresh?
Tractors. It's word association.
Yep, absolutely. Ranchers?
Cowboy hats.
What?
Cowboy hats.
Cowboy hats? Okay.
Lassos.
Brokeback Mountain.
Follow that one.
I would say big animals.
Okay.
Really glad I didn't have to follow Brokeback Mountain with this. My friend Gerard.
Horses.
Horses? Steve?
A couple things come to mind. I went to school in Texas, so I spent a lot of time with ranchers on that. The kids and the families had ranches, but also some time in Florida with them. So I think it's a big business and it's needed, and it's something that's overlooked, and most of the people don't even realize where their food comes from. They see just in a styrofoam package, but there's got to be somebody upstream. So.
Okay. Organic?
Trendy.
Well, at this point, milk, because it's been said so much today.
No chemicals.
No chemicals? Okay.
I guess I think of Whole Foods.
I'm sorry.
Whole Foods.
I see it as something that's not well defined, or it's not easily defined consistently, but needed in general, but not well defined universally.
First word that comes to mind when I hear organic is healthy.
I don't remember your name, I'm sorry.
Steve.
Steve, you said these two beautiful words, animated dialogue. That's what happens in my house with organic. Animated dialogue.
So I have to ask the other partner in your animated dialogue, who is the anti-organic person in your household, what makes them anti-organic?
We don't have the time. Science.
Okay. What does he do? You're an English teacher, so you're a skeptic. What does he do?
He is also a teacher.
Okay. Great. The next one is free range.
Chickens.
Yeah.
Bogus.
Bogus? Okay. What makes you say that?
I'm a skeptic of free range. Marisa was talking about chickens being free range earlier. I imagine people will take going from a cage to an extra foot just outside the cage, and now all of a sudden they're free range. Bogus.
Okay. Sure.
My world was chicken. Please
Yeah, chicken. Okay. We can do the same, you can agree. It's okay.
Okay, chicken.
I think of a better quality of life, but I also share your skepticism of what each word specifically means. Same with organic, and I think the definition, I think it's very fluid, unfortunately.
I'd say marketing,
Marketing?
period. That's what I see free range is now. Definition one thing, but when I see it on a print media or on a television or whatever, I think it's a marketing. What does it mean?
Okay.
Yeah, how free is it?
Wow.
What would make free range?
I remember in Hawaii seeing the chickens running around out by the streams with Filipino camp,
Okay.
and there was only one. There weren't like 29,000.
All right. Great. The next word is natural.
Hair.
What?
Hair.
The show?
No, the hair. Hair. Natural hair.
I don't get it.
It's word association. It doesn't need
That's what
Doesn't
came to
even make
mind.
sense.
I always think of my science teacher in high school. I think it was chemistry. Used to always tell you to be skeptical about natural, because she would just say, a lot of what is it? A lot of bad things are natural. She's like, there's tons of natural poisons in the world. It's natural is not necessarily a good thing.
Tree? Okay.
Have the direct relation would be everything. Everything's natural.
Okay.
Kind of same line. What does it mean?
Barefoot.
Okay. Next one is corn-fed.
They fed it corn.
Okay.
They're fats.
They're fat?
I just think of the controversy about corn.
What controversy is that?
I feel like everybody wants to hate corn, and I don't know if I agree with it or fully understand why. And yeah,
I didn't even know I was supposed to hate corn.
a lot of people hate corn.
What's wrong with corn? Don't they go to the movies?
It's in a lot of things, and they don't like that it's in everything.
Oh, the corn syrup.
Yeah, well, but yeah, from corn.
God, now I have to go research.
My dogs don't eat corn.
Your dogs don't eat corn? Okay.
I don't really know why. It says don't eat corn.
Who said they don't eat corn, or somebody told you not to?
No, supposedly you're not supposed to feed them any grain, really.
Mm-hmm. So you go the all-meat diet for your dog?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it has other things in it, but I don't know what that is.
So how much attention do you pay to what's in your dog's food?
Well, I like to. I had one dog that had major skin allergies and stuff, so they said to keep it on lamb and avoid additives and byproducts and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Jan, I think of energy consumption when I hear corn-fed.
Here, what?
I think of energy consumption. When
Energy consumption? How so?
I guess how much corn feed is given to specific animals to make them grow, and how much that affects the environment.
Mm-hmm. What's the effect on the environment?
I guess the per pound ratio for different animals, how much corn feed you give them, and how much they're producing the end product. I guess from what I understand, it's a massive amount of corn feed to get some of these animals pumped up.
Right. Is it how much land, agricultural land, is being used just to feed the animals versus could be used for food that we could eat instead?
What do you think about that?
I don't like it. I mean, it's a line that I sort of remembered. I'm not sure I'm quoting it.
Can you get it closer?
Sorry. Line that I've remembered in this, and I'm not sure I'm quoting it exactly or who it's from, but the eat good food, not too much, mostly vegetables.
It's Michael Pollan.
So,
It's Michael Pollan.
thank you. And so again, then it's been said multiple times, like trying to eat things in moderation, especially meats. We need way less meat than we think we do as Americans, especially red meat. But that's part of a lot of our culture as well. So that's more where it lives for me, is that the land could be put to better use than raising, than trying to, let's not get into an economic discussion, but growth economy obsession sort of thing, which is pun unintended about, pumping up the size of the livestock. Is that enough?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, you don't eat meat anymore, but you like meat. Mm-hmm. You're on the green-faced diet.
Yep.
And how do you reconcile that with believing that we're spending too much of our land on raising meat?
Well, the reconciliation would be that I eat a very small portion of meat. So, I mean, all the way back to the beginning, another thing that I consider when I'm buying the meat is that I'm looking for small portions. So I'm not trying to buy too much of it. So also ultimately that I'm not wasting so much. So that's the kernel of that thought process is just that the industry doesn't need to be as big as it is or is trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
my thoughts. My word association with corn-fed is insult.
Okay.
I don't know if that comes from like foghorn leghorn or something as a kid. Corn-fed hayseed, northeasterner from the northeast looking down on, I don't know, but that was it.
All right. And let's see. We talked about that one a little bit. So how about safe food?
safe food, is that what you said?
Top of mind, what comes to mind?
I just think question mark because I don't know what you mean. I don't know what safe
I hope
food.
it's all safe if we're
I
eating
mean,
it.
I say, what you grow in your house, like in your backyard.
Okay.
In my opinion, safe food is a requirement. Well, how you get there is a whole other question, whether it's something you grow in the backyard or if you're relying on someone who's produced something to make sure it's handled properly all the way from the full life cycle. That's okay. But safe food is an imperative, and I think it's not only something that we need to be concerned about here, but we need to be concerned about on a global level, because that's a huge issue. And that backs up into the water and the things that the animals eat, as also the water that's going into the lettuce and all these different things. The whole ecosystem has to be safe, and it is exposed.
My one-word answer is election.
Election?
No, election.
Election?
Election?
Election. Like voting for choices that we as a country and as a world will make, which will result in food that is safe under many definitions, both nutritionally and for the planet.
To kind of piggyback on that, my word is undefined. I don't know that safe food is wholly defined.
I guess I also think a little bit of like Chipotle and like sometimes you always think organic is better, or we're told that in a lot of ways, but in some ways it also isn't exposed to the same amount of protection. So there's a lot more for foodborne illness a lot of times than organic, and it's not something that we want, but it's that balance of healthy food that's safe and
It seems like all our responses are about definition. Like, if it's corn-fed, how do we define it? If it's organic, how do we define it? If it's safe, how do we define it? For skeptics.
So how do you feel about that?
Skeptical.
You're skeptical of your own skepticism?
I mean, it makes me, like, it delights me. Right? Like, people who are obviously different have suspicions about themselves and about the way things are presented to them. I think that's ideal.
Okay, great. So how often do you think about the animals that produce the food, the dairy products, the meat, milks, cheese, eggs? Like before you came here to talk to us.
I would say I think of them almost every time I eat, but I definitely think of them every time I cook for myself, which one thing about doing this green-based diet has gotten me to actually be cooking for myself much more than I have been a lot recently. That's another factor in my diet, is just not having the time and eating a lot on the go. So that would be my answer.
I try not to think about them
Okay. Because?
because somebody had to die so I could live. So that's not cool.
Okay. What's that?
I was complimenting Ginny's wisdom. She keeps saying these things that make me like Zen koan.
This is Yoda over here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I've got one last question, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. So I didn't tell you, or I tried to not let you know who the audience is here, but these are people that represent most of the food production, particularly milk, meat, dairy, eggs in the country. And what would be a way for them to reach you to, say, tell their story?
That's a good question. Come to my class.
Okay?
You're always invited.
And what would they say?
I don't know. That's why they'd come to my class.
Okay.
I guess that's sort of like my devotion to people's being informed. So I guess I would say classrooms are a great way to and counter those who do not have open minds, but might if you pry at them.
Okay. Jenny?
I'm a former teacher too, so I would prefer, educating the youth because, that's where our future is.
Mm-hmm. Sri?
And Facebook.
Facebook? Social media?
That's a good answer.
What would you read on Facebook?
I'm sorry,
What would you read on Facebook?
what would I read?
Yeah.
Something that's interesting.
Something that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make it interesting. I'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it comes down to kind of breaking the myth. All of us up here are pretty skeptical consumers. So if I were to see a video of chickens that were actually running around like crazy with a ton of free range, it would make me more of a believer, not just one video advertisement marketing scheme campaign, but an actual behind the scenes, hey look, this is actually humane and healthily produced food.
Okay, great.
I think I'd be more likely to believe whatever was shown. If I agree, I think social media is probably the most likely place that I would get it. But I think I'd be more likely to believe what I'm reading or seeing if it was a third party that was also involved in creating it. I didn't just feel like I was, listening to the marketing of whatever company was showing to me, because I would know that they had a specific outcome that they wanted, and no way of knowing if it's true.
And who would be a credible third party?
I imagine, I guess the news or some a journalist or even a skeptic of some kind. But yeah, I don't think I would trust. At least I would take it with a grain of salt if it was coming directly from a company.
Millennium Research.
There you go. We always tell the truth.
I'm glad you mentioned about the news piece, because we live in a 24-hour news cycle. And what I'm a real skeptic is, on Monday they say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, no pun intended. But then on Wednesday say, well, it might not be. But then on Friday you wind up with this obscure study in Nova Scotia that said it's worst thing for you. And the challenge that we have, and it's a bigger picture than here, is fact-checking. And you'll put somebody put something out, then somebody will read it, then quote that, then validate it, and then all of a sudden it becomes reality. But is it accurate? So I agree what you need to have. We should have some type of mechanism where it can be, a message can be put forth from an unbiased perspective, perhaps something like a Consumer Reports kind of a thing, and take that information and you put that in the education system. Then you take that same piece of information and you reach out to your faith-based communities. And if you hit those two areas, you'll get a lot of traction on it, in my opinion. But the real challenge is, and I joke with my team in my office, one of my favorite lines is 70% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Okay, that's my point, all right? So, and what we hear, we're bombarded with on commercials, media, social media, or print media, is that same mindset. And we need to really cut to the chase. Here is the unequivocal or fact-based solutions, or our directions that we have, products that are good for us, products that may not be so good for us, and have that in moderation with it. Deliver that message at the earlier ages and in different mediums, all using the social media. And I think then we'll really get a shift, not only in our dietary, but also in our whole thought processes. That's
Okay, right?
70% of all statistics.
Actually, it's 72%.
That's Monday.
All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. You've been so cooperative, and they weren't actually told that they were going to be in front of 200 people. So they've all played very nicely. So thank you all very much. And if there's any questions from the audience, we'd be happy to answer.
Hi, thank you all so much. It was really fascinating listening to your responses. A lot of you mentioned where you get information, like different sources. Is there a particular person, whose opinion about food or animals, health or nutrition, that you consider someone that you would look up to or believe if they were to communicate a message?
Mom.
I think that the root of where you're getting it has to do with integrity. And that's where I was trying to get to on that whole news cycle type thing. It's integrity. She just eloquently said, Mom, there's integrity with that. That's someone that you know that when they bring you other information, you can pretty much count on it.
How about like a famous person, a celebrity?
Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz.
I've been cooking a lot lately. I feel like I've been reading Sean Brock's cookbook, and I feel like he knows, I trust what he would say about food, and I feel like he's knowledgeable enough and has integrity enough that I would believe what he said.
Going back to the word association game that she was playing a minute ago, I'd like to throw one out and see what your definition is. If I tell you, or if I ask you to define, what does sustainability mean to you?
I think of sustainability is, particularly with crops or growing things, that the land can support another round, that it's going to grow back, and you're not just using up all the nutrients in the soil, and so it's usually less, but it lasts longer.
Do any of you follow farmers on social media? And if you do follow farmers on social media, are they mainly organic farmers because you buy organic, or conventional farmers because you buy conventional? And have you been, do you view them as having integrity?
I actually do. I follow 2 farmers. Both of them are organic farmers, and both of them I went to college with. So that's why I follow them, and I believe in them because I know them.
I didn't know there were farmers on social media.
Only 3%.
I just wanted to say a quick response to the word association of sustainability. Real quick, it was cost and energy efficient is what came to my mind.
Great. I've got one here. Do you trust government or non-government agencies for information about food? So I guess, which one would you trust more?
I was going to say yes. I trust and distrust them equally. Well, it sort of amounts to the same thing, but I trust them equally. I think there's a balance, that is constantly trying to be struck between, FDA, government regulations that are, I think, ideally would be very efficient and good, and sometimes they manage that. But then, on the other hand, sometimes it's a slower process than needs to happen, and therefore, private concerns can be better. But it's more of a situational, case-by-case basis for me.
Okay. Thoughts over them? Martini?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a really great question. I think I don't trust anybody. I think there's certainly flaws with government regulation and with government information, and I think government can't take on understanding of every aspect of our food universe. Is that a thing? Food universe?
Foodiverse.
But I also, I don't trust, organizations who are lobbying or representing these food sources.
Can I?
Yeah, if you have an answer, that's great.
Well, I just want to prod you a little bit by saying that your response to whichever one, natural, I don't know, but election.
Yeah.
So somewhere in you do maybe have more of a sense that government should be the way.
I think the answer actually is more responsibility for understanding.
Okay. But
and then acting. Responsibility for understanding and acting, but what information is there?
But we do have a better chance of doing that through government than through private.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I get it.
Just to chime in here, I think I would trust government, because I feel that a lot of government agencies have access to the best and brightest sources of information.
Okay. Got some more word association. It's hard to know which one to go first. Corporate farming.
Reality.
Okay.
Highly needed in our society. Not one word, but we need
What was that?
it. Highly needed in our society. We can't deal without it.
Okay.
Part of the infrastructure.
Shriva? What?
I mean, when you say corporate farming, I just think, money making business. But that's just me. That's how I do.
That's what we're here for. Money-making business, okay? Judy?
Same thing. When I think of farming, I don't think of the big picture, which I should. I think of the nice little pastoral, thing, which is not what it is these days, but anyway.
Okay, that actually brings up the next question, family farm. Top of mind.
Idyllic.
Idyllic?
I would say ideal.
Ideal?
I would say, I would say ideal and dying.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a challenging industry, but definitely needed.
The family farms are favored.
I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Word association with family farms, favored.
Favored? Okay, excellent. All right, this is our last question, 14 seconds left. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to understand the question. What do you think about all the negative videos out there? Do you believe everything you watch that is good or bad?
Well, everything that's on the internet is true, so. It does make it hard. I thought of this earlier when you were sort of asking about, I think it was the first question was, is there a source that you would trust, or when it was a person? I'm getting confused, but I started thinking about the internet, and I have a lot of skepticism, and advise everyone to do likewise on the internet, of course, as we all should. So Snopes.com is a great place to go. Snopes. They're a fact-checking website.
Okay.
They have, anytime you see somebody share something that seems outrageous, just type it into Google, and if Snopes has covered it, it'll come up first, whether it's true or not, for the most part. So.
Okay, cool. Other thoughts on videos?
I devote a lot of my time to trying to teach my students to understand that they should get their information from multiple sources and that not every source is trustworthy. But it's very interesting listening to people's responses. My initial response is not, I get my information from Facebook, but the true response is, I get my information from Facebook. And I get information, I believe different sources, but I get my information there. But I don't know. So these are hard questions. My students are not going to thank you.
A science teacher showed us this video that was, I think it was created by some farming, or actually I don't remember who it was created by, but whoever it was had a definite interest in skewing the story one way. But it was talking about, they didn't believe in global warming, but if it is happening, how great it's going to be for the environment, and how everything's going to grow so big, and all that. And they, were trying to be very scientific in the video, and it was. I feel like because of that, after watching that video, I always take everything with a grain of salt and do try to. I definitely trust science more, so I do try to find the scientific articles about things, but. That video was very skewed into science, it tried to be very scientific, so it's made me even a little skeptical of that.
I'm old enough to remember Duck and Cover.
Wow.
Remember when the atomic bomb blows up, little Jimmy just throws his bicycle over and covers his head.
Everything will be great.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, we've run out of time. Oh.
Question. I'm a beef cattle producer from Arkansas. I have 300 head of cattle that graze 1,000 acres and multiple pastures. And today in my industry, a really big controversial subject is the use of antibiotics. I have an ethical question. I have a cow that has pneumonia. Should I or could I be allowed to treat that animal with an antibiotic?
I have two answers. If I sat down and talked to you and you told me everything you know, I would be like, oh yeah, totally, right? Like it's probably an obvious thing to do, and you know way more than I do, and I think we'd probably have a really good conversation about it. And then I'm in the grocery store and I'm seeing this like antibiotic-free thing, and I take the non-antibiotic. Like, that's the honest answer. Like, I know if we had a good, you look like someone who could like tell me something about antibiotics and cows. No, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm serious. Like, I think that you probably have really interesting information about that, but I wouldn't be thinking of you.
I'm wearing a white dress shirt and a suit pants. Why would you think that I would know something about antibiotics and cattle?
I would actually probably trust you more with overalls.
My Wranglers and boots are upstairs.
I would say please treat the cow, but if you're going to put it as a food source, please label it that you've done so.
That's interesting. I don't know about that.
My simple answer is yes. My extended answer is I love antibiotics.
Oh, I was just saying, yes, treat it, but I'm not sure I want to eat it.
Okay. Now, why not? Why don't you want to eat it?
I don't want unnecessary antibiotics. I just don't want it.
Okay. Great.
A little bit of a follow-up. I'm a large animal veterinarian, and I'm a specialist in infectious diseases of cattle. And I'm glad that you allow me to use antibiotics to treat my animal from an animal welfare aspect. And I think it's a huge issue in this country that people at the consumer level don't think about. And animal welfare is very important to me because I love my cows. And I want them to have a great life. Thank you.
Thanks for all your comments. And for those of you who eat meat, a lot of us don't like to think about it, but of course animals have to be slaughtered in order to harvest the meat. So my question to you is, if you could see a video that showed slaughter of cattle, pigs, sheep, hosted maybe by a third-party expert who just laid it out and explained it all, would you want to see it? Do you think it would make you feel better, or do you just not want to know?
No.
I'd rather not know. Yeah. I'd rather not know. I go on a wildlife safari twice a day that's online, that's way cool, and it's live. But, you know, when the lions are going after the buffalo, I got to turn away.
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely would like to see that. And I can tell a story. Years ago, I went to school for hotel and restaurant management, a lot of culinary classes. And when the instructors taught us how to butcher all these things, that came out of, off the truck, do all those fun things. Well, one summer I went down to El Paso, Texas to visit my grandfather, and he knew that I was doing this culinary thing. And he said, come with me, I have friends that have some cows. So we went out there and dropped a calf and slaughtered the whole thing. And it was a whole awareness. I videotaped this thing and took back not videotaped that back then, it was like little snapped pictures. And I was so proud of understanding the whole process. Kind of startled, but now I knew what it wasn't in the styrofoam package. Well, I came back to school that next semester, very proud to show my fellow students, and they all freaked out. So I think it's something, yes, it should be done tastefully, but give it not only from the small farmer's perspective, but also from the large agricultural business, the large corporate farm perspective. So yes, we should know where our things come from.
I think I'd rather see the quality of life and in alive than see the slaughter. I think I'd be less likely to buy the meat if I saw the slaughter.
Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I wouldn't want to see it and then eat it.
Okay. So show them having a nice, happy life, well-fed, good to go.
I would like to see that video.
Okay. So there's lots of videos to be made then. All right, well, our time is up. Thank you all so much. And let's give